Today we're smoking the Montecristo White Series, an absolute staple for every humidor around the United States.
The name Montecristo is synonymous with Cuban tobacco, but on the U.S. market, we have the Altadis branded version of the Montecristo line, along with a few other non-Cuban versions of Cuban classics like H. Upmann, Romeo y Julieta,
Trinidad, things like that.
Yep. And the White Series is kind of the creme de la creme, the most widely known, in my opinion.
I would say so. I mean, like you said, like when you think of Montecristo, your mind kind of gravitates towards the Cuban counterparts. I mean, the Montecristo #2 Cuban is probably the most desired, most well-known outside of the domestic versions of Montecristo. But I would say, with that being said, the White Series is what you're going to think of from a domestic point of view. Like it's going to be in every humidor. It's all over the internet.
It's a golf course staple.
Absolutely.
We were briefly talking about this prior. The White Series came out at a time in the mid-2000s when Altadis was really focusing on these non-Cuban brands. And I think they were gearing their portfolio more towards the newer cigar smoker, the golf course cigar smoker, someone who might gravitate towards lighter cigars when a majority of the market was shifting towards fuller-bodied Nicaraguan stuff.
Sure.
So in the mid-2000s, Montecristo released, or Altadis released the Romeo Reserva Real, which, I mean, it's just crazy popular.
At one time, the biggest selling cigar within the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And White Series Montecristo was just another one that blew that portfolio up, and for good reason. I mean, it's a delicious cigar.
Right. I mean, at the release of something like this is right after the cigar boom of the 90s. Connecticut leaf wasn't necessarily seen as the big hot thing anymore.
Yep.
And essentially Altadis said, hey, with this Montecristo White, we want to kind of bring back that, but we want to bring it out in a new form where you're going to find with this cigar a more like medium body. Like when you think of like a Connecticut wrapper, you automatically think lighter, you think smoother. And not to say that this isn't smooth, but there's definitely a lot more oomph to it than you would get from a Connecticut, especially at the time period that it was coming out.
Yeah, I think it took me a while in my cigar smoking journey to smoke a White Series. And I think I was surprised at, I expected a much milder experience, just because of, you imagine that something in Connecticut and just this branding is milder.
Sure.
But it's way more geared towards my palate than I expected it to be.
To go along with that, I think what's interesting about this is, one, this is a cigar that could be for absolutely anyone at any time of the day.
Right.
But it's got some complexity to it. And considering this is probably one of the most mass-produced blends in the cigar market, I think to find the ability to make it that consistent and complex at the same time, that's a true form of art.
Yeah, it's got this creamy body to it, with some white pepper spice. I get a lot of hay. I get a lot of light woods, cedar, and just kind of a general floral tone.
Yeah, absolutely. The cedar, absolutely right onto it. It's got that creamy texture body going along with it. Almost like a little hint of like a light roast coffee, especially on the retro ale.
Yeah, a little dulce de leche.
That's fancy.
It's good, man. I think that's the best way to put it. This is a really, really good cigar, and it's approachable. It's in a realm where I think it's at a good price point. And like you said, it's good for any time of day. It's mild enough you could smoke it in the morning. It's full enough you could smoke it after a meal.
Absolutely.
Versatility.
I think if you had never smoked a cigar before and you came to my house or into my lounge or whatever, you're really wanting to kind of understand what a beginner level cigar is, this is the perfect one to go into. This is absolutely, if you've never smoked a cigar at all, this would absolutely be something that you should put into that beginning stage. But it's also not necessarily the beginner cigar. Like once you smoke it and you understand it, this is something that could be your staple, that could be in your rotation, that you could smoke for as long as you want to smoke cigars.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those cigars I would not grow tired of. And if you're into more of the boutique style of things, you know, we can be guilty of not necessarily showing love to these things that are more widely known. I think it's good to revisit these classics and staples in the cigar industry, and you'll be surprised at just how dynamic and how complex they can be.
Sure. I would say, like, coming from someone who has smoked cigars for the better part of 18 years, I got into a group of friends who introduced me to cigars, who were handing me not things like this. They were handing me like the Tatuajes and the more boutique stuff, and I gravitated towards that mindset. So to me, as I furthered into a cigar smoking career, I guess you could call it, this was always something I'd say like I would never want to put into my humidor.
Right.
And I'm glad that years later someone introduced me to the White Series, especially in the #1 size, nice little Corona size going on here. I kind of kicked myself in the backside there for not trying this sooner in life, you know.
So be sure to try the Montecristo White Series on smokingpipes.com. It comes in a variety of sizes. Like Tyler said, we personally prefer the #1, but each size presents itself a little bit differently on the palate. Make sure to like and subscribe for more cigar content.
That's right.